a lot of people are like, CSS is terrible. Why would it let you do this? And really, it's like, that's actually kind of cool. It lets you do that. What is bad is, why would somebody write that? Like, what do they mean?
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to CSS Masters Talk. My name is Amit Chin. With me is Elad Schechter. And today, coming to us straight from the CSS Podcast, Adam Argyle. Hi, Adam. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, it's nice to be here. Thanks for having me on. CSS Masters. Am I a master? I don't know, but I'm interested.
You are a master. And I know you're a busy guy. As I said, you're a co-host at the CSS Podcast with Una Kravitz. You're a part of the CSS Working Group, and you work for Google Chrome as a CSS DevRel, developer relations.
Yeah.
So my first question is actually not about CSS. It's about working for Google. Is it really great as everybody say it is?
I will give you an honest reflection on working at Google. Google is, yes, as awesome as you hear it is. Simultaneously, it might be the most challenging job you've ever had. And that can catch people off guard. And another thing is folks join Google and want to have the impact that Google has. And it often leads to a sort of immediate amount of depression as you realize that the company is humongous, the size of a country. And so how could you just show up and have impact and do so? Folks can struggle to find their way and their value and what it is that they really can do at Google. And it can be really stressful. So sometimes you get this amazing job and the pressure of it being so amazing and the expectations that you can do whatever you want crush you into feeling like, why am I not getting that? Why am I not doing that? Am I wrong? Am I bad? And so Google is a very amazing place to work, absolutely. And it doesn't have its fair share, though, of pressures and anxiety-inducing things and things that can make the job not be very fun. So not everybody is delightfully and gleefully happily employed at Google like I am. I'm obsessed with my role. I'm just so stoked on it. But I don't know, did that answer the question well and give you like a fair breakdown?
Yeah, it's a great answer. But as being a developer, working as a developer relations, being here is actually part of your work?
Yeah, what's funny is there's a lot of things part of my work, and then I like this part of the work. Like, to me, it's really important that I engage with people, that I touch into the, like, other community members that aren't just within my bubble. So one of the things, I do multiple things to try to stay in touch with developer communities. One of them is being very receptive to things like this. I have another one tomorrow. Very excited to just sit down and talk shop. I just want to know, like, what do you do with your CSS? Do you like it? Are you having fun? And so acquiring this and knowledge and invoking it from people is really, really fun for me. And I've gone through many phases. Like in the beginning of the year last year, I interviewed like 30 people from around the world. I just set up interviews and was like, tell me about where you work, how big's the team, what is hard, what can I help? And then I do lots of activity on GitHub. I have AMAs I've done. I don't know. I try to like really saturate myself and everywhere so that I have a very holistic and big perspective when it comes to what does CSS need and where are people actually struggling. Yeah,
Great. I think we actually have a lot in common. You two are a full stack developer, at least according to the site. But it's obvious to everyone that knows you that your true passion is front end, specifically CSS. Why? What made you focus on CSS and not on other languages?
Yeah. Okay. So I definitely didn't start in the front end, and what I found out really quickly was it was really hard to share what you do with your friends if you're a back-end engineer or if you're a systems engineer, right? You're like, I spun up 8 pods in a Kubernetes cluster and deployed them across the world, and then CDNs picked up all of the endpoints, and now it's all cached, and everyone's like, what? I don't care about that. What are you talking about? But then I can show up and be like, hi, go to this URL, and if you tap this button, it does a spin. And everyone's like, you make stuff spin. And so I really liked this tangible side of programming. It was this thing that was like, I could take this systems thought, turn it into a tangible moment and like a little thing. And it was very creative. It was very mine. And what I noticed going through school, because I did mostly Java and back-end programming all through college, was that no one cared about how it looked. And I did. And it was like important to me that I was taking the time to make it look good. And so as soon as I learned about Flash, I went nuts, because Flash made it really easy to just target something and affect it with some code. And it was, so I got really addicted to building web experiences with Flash, and I just kind of snowballed. And the front end, I think these days, is the hardest. So hey, back end engineers, everybody out there, I think you have a hard job. Like, that programming is not easy, but it is not as hard as the front end. The front end is taking the blunt of the timeline, right? Everybody's squeezing it into the very end. You know, it's not like back end services get squeezed into the end. No, they've been working on the whole time. So it gets all the pressure, and it has all of the visibility. So whatever you deliver, it doesn't matter how cool your engine is. It doesn't matter what metal you built your car out of. Like, someone's going to sit in it, and if they can turn it on and drive it, they're happy. If they can't, they don't care. And I like knowing how cars are built, and I'm very much a full stack engineer, but I use that entire root system knowledge just so that I can make sure the plant and the presentation tier that's poking out of the dirt that's user facing is gorgeous and usable. Like, and I just love it, man. I don't know.
It's a great answer. As you said, you're in contact with a lot of CSS developers, and one subject that we talk a lot about here on the show is the position of a CSS developer. Elad and myself, we believe that big companies with big development teams need someone who is a CSS specialist, not a front-end developer that knows CSS, but a CSS developer. So, do you agree? And if so, do you think that in the future we'll see more and more big companies adding positions and hiring developers specifically for CSS?
Hits home. Yes, absolutely. You need people in the company, on your team, that are passionate about the front end layer and CSS and HTML and probably some JavaScript. I call these folks generally UX engineers. You could call them maybe more specifically CSS engineer. When I led a team at Deloitte Digital, I advocated very hard to keep the track for the career path for our web developers open in the CSS and HTML space, and not to limit them and force them into JavaScript. And it was very important. It turned out that, like a year or two later after we made that decision, and these people have, some are growing in JavaScript and some are growing in their HTML, they would come together with the most amazing work, because they were each sort of little less responsible for the holistic deliverable, but they could work together to make something really nice. I think that UX engineering it's always going to be important. I hope it gets hired for more. I don't think it does right now, because it's like your UX isn't the first thought, even though you might say it is. I think getting the product out is typically the first goal. And then you're like, oh, wait, our UX needs to be better, or else our competition can't, anyway. So yes, CSS is super important. It should be a career track that people can stay in and they don't have to exit. There should still be growth. I think that the front end is so hard that you could be there for many years and continue growing. And it is important that the company that you work for respects the role of the front end developer as much as they do the JavaScript engineer. Because anyway, yeah, I think that's all in one. If you otherwise are lopsided. Yeah.
As you said, it is important, but a lot of big companies don't have specific CSS specialists. Some do,
yeah.
Most don't. How do you suggest that we'll deliver the importance of this role to big companies?
Yeah, like if you were to go be a consultant and try to sell them on the value of this, I like car and house analogies for helping people understand the complexity of like building software. And what you could say is that if you're building a house and you want to have $1 million home be sold and you have a big team, that's going to be putting it all together. Let's imagine you have no interior decorator and no finishing team, no team that goes and finishes any crown moldings, nobody that puts any granite countertops on, it's just wood. And then have them just imagine a house or a car that was built that way with none of the sort of finishing touches. And then you're just like, what we need is someone that is exclusively cares about these finishing touches, and they work with the engineering team and our users. You need someone representing the holistic experience of touching this thing you made. And if you don't have any CSS people company, you will be delivering wood block houses and that are just unpainted. They look unfinished. And the more that you invest in these, the more that you can sell your home for. Arguably go say that finishing touches make all the difference. Just like an interior decorator, you can go pay for one to come in and take your $1 million house, stage it, and now it's like $1 million whatever because it looked nicer as people walked through it, right? Perception makes a lot of difference. So
yeah, it's a great analogy. Yeah, so you're a part of the CSS Working Group and you're working at Google Home. So you have a unique point of view on the process new features go through from the initial idea through the drafts and up to the actual implementation of in the browsers.
yeah.
Can you take us through the life cycle of a new CSS feature?
Yeah. Oh, I have a document of it, but you know what? I think I could do most of it audible here. So it tends to start out, so there's like a couple of phases where we'll talk about synchronous things that happen and asynchronous things that happen with the spec proposal. So we'll follow one along as it just kind of goes from nothing into something. And the way that it starts is someone needs to have an idea, and it usually is based on a problem that they're having. So they'll have some use case. They're building a site and they couldn't do this thing on the web without JavaScript, and they thought that it'd be really nice to be able to do that without JavaScript or something. So they can go to GitHub, they can make an issue, they can even go to a gist or a Google document or any document that you want. You need to go declare the problem space and talk about what it is that you'd like to see instead. And in this feature request / proposal, you can be as minimal or as full coverage as you want to be. So you could just say, here's the problem space, and I have no idea how to fix it. Or you can say, here's the problem space, here's a JavaScript snippet and a little code pen. You can go run it and simulate the behavior that I want. I just want this in CSS. And then you can go talk about syntax. So you can sort of like outline a future workflow that helps solve this, and then dial that back. And so what happens is you submit that, and it can get tagged and labeled with like a few things. And if you think about this like a design system where you're submitting a change into the design system of CSS. So it starts as a proposal and people will talk about it. And this is one of those asynchronous natured moments where it will just randomly, at the rate that it happens, will have some activity. Sometimes those proposals have no activity, sometimes they have a ton. And they can go anywhere from moving somewhere new in a day to moving nowhere in multiple years. So a proposal can die or it can continue living. Its next stage is to be proposed and talked about in a CSS working group call. And someone will talk about it. They'll be like, here's the idea. Everyone gets it. So this is a synchronous moment. So it went from an asynchronous presentation to a synchronous presentation to see interest of the working group. And if the working group likes it, they can give it a thumbs up and essentially turn it into an editor's draft where this thing kind of goes into the next stage of promotion. You could think of this like stage 0 or maybe stage 1 in JavaScript, ECMAScript land, where it's not standard at all, but it's on a track. It's as risky as you want to get in there. So anyway, there's a working draft, which is has like 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 editors, and you'll eventually want to get another browser on board. And you can do these things so when you want another browser on board, you probably want another browser on board to be an editor with you. And then you also need implementers. And so this is where an engineer needs to start prototyping your standard idea or this proposal, putting it into the browser behind a flag, and then letting people build tests and vet the idea. And as that gets built into more browsers as an experiment, it eventually can hit 2 browsers, and it can come out of an experiment, and it becomes stable it becomes stable in the browser, and it was probably already it should be stable in the spec before that. So to have something go from a working draft as like a kind of idea in a spec to a final draft, it does have to go through a couple rounds of CSS working group revisions, votes, and you need to have 2 full browser implementations in the browser before this thing hits a full standard recommendation. So any questions? That's kind of how it goes. It's like asynchronous, synchronous, asynchronous, synchronous, and then they kind of resolve. Yeah.
Over the years, I had like a couple of ideas that I said like, why can't I do it with CSS? But maybe I'll take your advice and I'm gonna write it on GitHub. I don't know.
Absolutely. No, people should be doing that way more often. So definitely get in there. Have no fear. They're really nice. They'll help guide you through, and you can't really be wrong. So just be open-minded and be ready to help. Yeah, because they'll try to discover how to solve it with you. They're really nice. It's really nice.
Great. So speaking of new features, as you know, we're here in Israel. We're writing in Hebrew, and we have to deal a lot with the subject of direction, left to right, right to left. So we're really into logical properties. I think it's a game changer.
Me too.
And I'm using it more and more lately. But Elad, you have some questions about logical properties, so why don't you take this one?
Okay. I wrote an articles and done a talk in the end of 2018, and I thought logical properties is here, and in 2019 we can use it everywhere. But it seemed to me that logical properties has a lot of small features in a lot of properties, and even in 2020 there are still so many things missing, small things and big things. One of the things that I saw, and I really used the W3C GitHub, and I added suggestion about shorthands, and I done the suggestion in the end of 2018, and I saw that in the last month that you wrote about it something.
Oh, I know what we're talking about. Yes.
Flow mode. Yes. There isn't any new updates about how to create shorthands in logical properties? Any new news about it?
No. So I went and poked that comment thread because I would like it resolved. I think it's really important to have a shorthand. And the conversation in there is so interesting because you basically have the full spectrum of I want to be able to change. So the problem space is, everyone, we want to be able to say margin and do all 4 sides, but we want the logical sides, not the physical sides. Whereas the margin property right now goes right, it's like top, right, bottom, left. And in the logical world, that's not that straightforward. It's contextual to whatever the browser writing mode or direction is. So how do you name that? And some people want it to be like this global thing where they just go to their document and they're like, all of my shorthands that are margin and padding will now be logical. They're logical forever. And then some people are like, well, what if I want to be physical and everywhere except right here? How do I go shorthand one logical margin shorthand? And so, yeah, it's a really interesting problem. I've gone through all the phases of which ones I like, and I think I'm in the one where I just want to write margin, all the sides, and then just say logical or something, and just put like a little flag in there, and just do it in the moments. That way, I don't know. What's your opinion? How you feel about it?
I think that we need the 2 opinions. I think we want that we have something global and write flow mode, a logical, for example, on the HTML element in the CSS.
Yeah.
And this way, all the shorthands will be logical. But for other people that want to use only, for example, one shorthand, the logical, we can add the logical word in the beginning. And this way, we give the user two ways to use it. And I think in this way, because when we are working in Israel, for example, and we are working in Semitic languages, Arabic and Hebrew, we want that we can write it on the HTML document, writing mode, and a flow mode, and that's it, we finish. And all the shortcuts will be working like this. But still, if other developers want to use it only in one property, we can give them both, right? Only the logical keyword in the beginning is shortened. Why not use 2 solutions and not only one solution? I
like that. I like that because you're absolutely right. All of my documents have a language declared on the HTML element. I'm already globally establishing something.
Yeah.
Why not set my my flow mode with it? Why not set my desire to use logical or physical properties or not? I'm sold. Yeah, I do think, but it's an interesting conversation. I'd love to see it resolved. I'm happy you're using so many logical properties. I'm kind of exclusively using them, and you're right. There are a lot of interesting little edge cases that don't work, and you're like, well, how does this that and so I'm following up with some of that stuff inside of Chromium. So we have inset, which doesn't work, but it does behind a flag. Margin inline and padding inline don't work in Chrome for some reason right now. So those shorthands don't, but they do if you enable the flag for experimental web platform features. So anyway, I'm inside Google here and I'm logging bugs on Chromium and I'm like, hey, so how long until we feel it's stable to announce inset? You know, like this stuff is really cool. When's it out? And it should be out before the end of the year. And I'm trying to help them harden it and get it right because I have a couple of blog posts I've been writing about international layouts and how to do, write one CSS style sheet and manage every single language in every direction perfectly. I'm like, that sounds interesting, right? And it's all logical properties powered, and I'm a huge fan. It's amazing stuff.
Yeah, for us, it's not just a solution. As I said, it's a game changer because most of our 99% of our website are both in Hebrew and English, at least Hebrew and English. So
yeah,
logical properties, at least the inline part, is something that we do use a lot.
Yeah, I like the mental switch too. I think of it almost like instead of asking someone for their to shake their right hand or whatever, you just say, "What's your strong hand?" Right? You're just sort of like aliasing the physical to a new logical one that then can be changed by the browser. And I like the new terminology too. I think block and inline make a lot of sense. They've helped me as a CSS developer think more richly about just the boxes that I'm making and how they're sized. So I'm super happy to hear you guys are enjoying logical properties. I think they're really cool.
Mhm.
I have two more questions about logical properties. And
Yeah.
I really loved it. I understand one thing. I see that the logical properties is working quite good when you are working with LTR and RTL languages. But when I want to think about responsiveness that support the old Far East languages like traditional Japanese and traditional Chinese,
Mm-hmm.
the text is written from top to bottom. And it's meaning that if you think about, if we want to create a traditional Japanese website, it's like taking a website and rotating it 90 degrees into the right. And now, instead of the responsive according to the width, it needs to be according to the height. And in the media rules, it seems to be missing, instead of max width, minimum width, minimum max inline size, and which I don't see that we're getting any support for media rules that will support responsive design in writing mode of vertical RL or LR.
Interesting. Yeah, let me give this a quick test in my browser. Let's see. So we've got.
I can tell you we tested, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I wrote an article about it. Yes, me too.
You did? Okay. So yeah, tell me more.
I wrote when before we done this talk, I tried to create other tested what's still missing, and I will send you the document after if you want. But I have one thing that is very important. We don't use it so much in 2020, but we still need it. The float property. I see that Mozilla does have a support for it. The keywords of inline start and the inline end, and it's just important that when we want to float images and around text, we need a minimal support for the floats. And for this, you have any info if it's getting under the hood?
Nice. So yeah, I like this. You're finding similar to what I do is like every time I type width or left, I think to myself, where's the logical property equivalent of this, right? Like, how do I write this agnostic to the physical screen real estate? Because that's what I want to do. I just want to write this like it's a text document. I haven't seen the floats. You know what? I think I do remember seeing float start, but let me look these things up. Those are super cool. edge cases I want to know more about. So we have min and max inline size, min and max block size. So you're saying those are just totally gone? They're not even to be found?
In the media rules, only in the media rules. Yes, there are.
Okay, yeah, just the meta rules.
I tested from the beginning in 2018. I tried, I think, little bit months ago.
Yeah, okay, so I have Canary open with experimental web platform features, and max block size and is good, but there's a lot of weird things kind of tucked behind some experiments in Chrome. So I'm gonna go check this out. I'd love to research this more and figure out where these are. So I'll just add them to my list of things. I'm like, here's logical properties I would like to see move forward. Do you have more?
I have,
This is cool.
I have a lot more, but I think it's maybe too much for you if you want now. If I want, I can send you all the document that
Yeah,
I will send you after all the document that I sent.
absolutely.
Maybe now I have a connection that thinks that maybe you can make them update in the home. It will be very cool for us.
Definitely contact me. I hope I'm a reachable person that you think will answer and reply anyway. So yes, send me a message.
You will do it whatever you want. Maybe we will change, maybe we not, but I will maybe try with it.
Cool. I should send you my little website I'm making because the website I'm working on. Here it is. So when I'll share this just to y'all directly because it's fun. But the whole point of this is to demonstrate how to build a international website. So this will appropriately go to traditional Chinese. You can rotate and do everything that you need, and all of the text will continue flowing. And scroll direction is also maintained. And so the effect that I did on the page is like, those typical marketing sites that have like promo and image, and then it rotates and it says like promo image, and then it rotates, and it just sort of has like these feature blocks. I did that in an international way so that it's always alternating across all the languages. It's responsive, and it's all done with media queries and grid. And I am infatuated with how little I have to write and how far my styles go. The web is very cool. So I just need to get this teaching out there and help other people feel empowered. It sounds like y'all feel very empowered by logical properties, and that makes me happy. So if you are feeling empowered on the front lines, that's setting up a really good track for everyone who's going to be behind you. I'm excited.
Me too. I'm really trying to learn all the word that will use logical properties, but I think it's a little bit stuck because all the small stuff, and I have a lot of ideas about and some other things that doesn't have support. For example, if we have arrow that going to right, how we maybe need to think about how to change it to be arrow left when we're changing the direction. And
is that like a HTML Unicode character?
No, if I think maybe it's a Unicode character, maybe it's an image. I don't know. It's some small stuff that how to complete it and make it fully, that it will be so easy that we're writing only one CSS and you know that it's working for all the languages. And it's going to write in Japanese, it's traditional Japanese is going to the bottom. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like because a lot of that stuff we get for free now with like emoji and question marks, right? As the writing mode and the languages change. So like in traditional Chinese, if you write an emoji, it shows up underneath the other characters in the right direction. And so does a question mark. A question mark will show up for me to read, even though I'm reading top to down, right to left. So it's just really interesting. The web does have these things in there that will take, and I assume if you used a Unicode arrow and pointed right, but I don't think it would point down in a traditional Chinese language. That's very interesting. So yeah, how do we get logical directional arrows? Or how do we, I guess we would use a media query so we could look at like, what's the writing mode or what's the direction on the document, and we could go, rotate our image or rotate a character. But yeah. Oh, that's another thing too, is like images. You put images in these international layouts, and even though the text all of a sudden goes left to right or right to left, the images still stay vertical for you to see. So on Chinese and Japanese, everything's all switching around, but the images and the emoji all stay nice and legible. It's very magical.
Yes, I have a lot of stuff I wrote. For example, background position, you can give it left and right, and tell it how much from the left or how much far from the right. But maybe now you can use keywords like inline start, inline end, block start, block end, edit.
I know that background position is in the specs, right?
A logical version though? I know there's a physical one.
No,
Oh,
logical property for background position. I think I saw it in the specs.
cool.
Uh,
That makes sense.
Maybe box
Good.
shadow, the X and the Y, instead of X and the Y, it will be inline and block. And this way that if you change the shadow, the shades from that it will be in the right, in the second language it will be in the left.
Here, I have a question for you. Because we don't have over scroll inline or over scroll block, and I'm of the opinion right now that that's okay because we typically do scrolling very physically. So do you have any use cases, or I'm curious to know when you might have wanted like an over scroll inline versus an over scroll X? Like at which point would you want the writing mode to change? Anyway, yeah, it sounds like you're interested. Yeah, tell me more.
I think we need it because when we are in English or Hebrew and Arabic website, we are going the scrolling direction is going from top to bottom. But
Yeah.
if you are working in traditional Japanese website, it's meaning that the website is 90 degrees to the right. And now instead of
Mhm.
a horizontal scroll, we now have, instead of a vertical scroll, we now have an horizontal scroll that's
Yeah.
going from the bottom. I think we need it. I think. I'm
I
not.
see. So that would be, yeah, because that's over scroll block auto, because what you're saying is the block direction of any language should be, this should be the scrollable space, which is the default, I guess, huh?
Uh,
Oh, yeah.
we
Go
just
ahead.
just from my info in Japanese and Chinese they are now working with LTR directions. All the writing mode gave the support that we can use the old traditional languages that I don't use now in this time of area of time. I think only because the internet wasn't working this way, and now we can give them the support, but you need to know that in Japanese and Chinese, they are working with regular LTR language for now. But the writing mode give them the possibility maybe to working in a scroll direction that is horizontal instead of vertical. But there isn't any one really website that's using or working this way for now. From what I checked out, I didn't find anything. And
Really?
I want
So
to
maybe
find.
my site must be the first one because it does that. It will scroll vertically, and then as you change the direction, or to traditional Chinese, it goes horizontal and will scroll to the left. Um,
Interesting. I would love to.
and the way that it was really tricky. So, man, here's like, I love logical properties so much. It's such a good topic. So, on this topic specifically, I have a code pen I want to send you because there's a hot topic internally with the layout engine team here at Chromium, and I'm going to tell you why. So, I'm going to go to my code pen. I'm going to search my code pens for, I think it's like, it's viewport. So, the quest here, the CSS quest that this was supposed to answer is, how do I make my body the full viewport? So a lot of times people will be like 100 viewport height or something like that. But what if you want to just use percentage? What if you want to just fill it up? So you got to make the HTML document fill, then the body document fill, and then and even kind of gets trickier in there. But I wanted to do it with logical properties because I wanted to make a code pen that I had an item in the center, and then if I switched writing modes or languages, it was still in the center. Turned out it was really tricky because if you do height and width 100%, right, it won't be in the center on the other directions and writing modes. So let me share with you the code pen starter that helps you basically start out on the right foot here for having logical properties and a fully responsive international starter. The idea is that it has min block size, max block size, inline size block. It's like it's using all logical properties and has a place grid on the body and then centers it internationally. So it's like international center, and your body is filling the viewport, which is important for building an app. Like if you wanted to go make a top bar and a bottom bar, this sets you up for, I think what it sets you up for is what you thought you got when you started a new web project. Is if like you have a blank body tag and you put something in it. I think this behaves closer to your initial perceptions, but we'll see.
No more logical property questions, Elad?
I really love this fun, and I can talk about it hours, but I think
Yeah.
it would be too much for our viewers.
It is hard. So I love that we can have this conversation though about writing modes and directions, because that's a hard conversation to have with folks that aren't accustomed to it. Because you're right, like Hebrew and Japanese, well, traditional Chinese, these are really tricky on your mind when you see them in action. And until like block and inline really solidify as just sort of like character flows, um, I don't think a lot of it makes sense. So I'm just having fun, like you being able to paint something for me, and I'm just following along. I'm like, yes, someone's speaking the like logical property language I know, and let's work through some of these edge cases and make sure it's as good as it can be for everyone else following us, right? So awesome.
Yeah, it's really fun to see, because when I learn logical properties, and I wrote the articles, and I wrote the articles not it was the way for me to learn it, not
Yeah,
than others. This was my summarized to learn logical properties, and I published this article and didn't thought that it would interest anybody in the world. And 1 week after, all the Japanese, Chinese, and Russian, all around the world, are trying. They loved it so much, and then I understand that there isn't a lot of people or web developers all around the world that understand logical properties so much. There is only few people that try to understand it fully,
yeah,
and it's and you getting to understanding that you see that there's still missing stuff, and you understand that even maybe the people that develop it doesn't understand it entirely, because it's very complicated in the first time that you try
yeah.
to understand logical properties. I will send you all the stuff that I know that is missing, and if I have more stuff, I will send it to you again.
I would love that. I've tried to like figure out how to, because a lot of people just don't get the value, right? They hear new syntax words that don't make as much sense to them, and they're like, left and top makes sense to me. Um, I've been trying to find other similar things in our language that we've done as like as a human race to do similar things. And so a couple of them that I have are like when you're on a boat, you don't talk about the physical side of the boat. You talk about the side of the boat based on where the front of it is. It's a logical side. You say starboard and port side, right? These are logical properties that are names that we've learned to alias so that we can align and act faster on the boat. There's another one, which is skiers left. Have you heard of this one for skiers and snowboarders to know on a mountain? Because let's say you're on a mountain, and if you're looking up the mountain, you're going up the ski lift. Left and right aren't the same as when you're looking down the mountain. When you're looking down the mountain, right and left are now the opposite. So when you're talking to someone who's skiing and you're like, yeah, we'll do this, and then we'll go skiers left. That means if I'm facing up the mountain, I can actually think about myself left going down the mountain. So it's orienting me in this like contextual direction. So yeah, they're words that actually get us further and advance us as a sort of communication style. But you do have to get people on board, or else.
Yeah, I agree. I totally
Yeah,
agree. I think maybe in like 2 or 5 years from now, I think you will just use logical properties, because this way you're creating a website. Even if it's now only for English, you're getting a free support for all the type of the languages in one time written, and not you need to create it again and again and again and again.
I agree. Yeah, I don't write it without them now. And the support is good enough that it only is annoying for me when I hit those edge cases where I'm like, I would like to use logical properties here for something like, yeah, background position. I'm like, oh, I can't. Okay. I can't complete my solution yet, but I can at least still get really accustomed and familiar with the verbiage and usage. Yeah. But I agree. Let's go all in. There's no reason to use physical sides anymore, even if you're just making a site for internal microsite. Use logical properties, because there's shorthands like margin in line and padding in line. I use those all the time for just referencing the top and bottom or left and right. It's very cool stuff. Yeah, people don't know what they're missing, right? It's
I totally agree. I'm so happy that we talked, that now I have someone that understands me, and maybe because you are working in Google Chrome and W3C, I think something that now will getting even better.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I like it too, because I'm a little alone sometimes internally in Google. And I'm like, hey, logical properties, we should keep going. You know, we made a good start. Why aren't we releasing more? And so more conversations like this and more things for me to take to them and say, it's not just me. It's just a whole a whole bunch of people. Here's a bunch of things that someone's waiting for. Look, they have a list. They have a list of things that they need fixed. I love that stuff, and I think I will represent it very well. So I'm very excited. Send it all over. It's really good.
I will send.
And send me the links. I'd love to see the links of the stuff y'all are making with it. You'll see all of my demos have logical properties, and there was I had a point there and I forgot it. So anyway, I'll think of it later.
So let's talk about a different subject. Let's talk about your podcast. I think the name says it all, the CSS Podcast. You co-host it with Una Kravitz, as I said, and each episode you talk about the different aspects of CSS, like borders or pseudo elements and units and colors and anything. Like you say, everything from accessibility to z-index. But how did it begin, and how do you select what the topics that you talk about, and what would you do when you ran out of topics?
Good question. So we, so Yoon and I sat down and we were like, there needs to be a CSS podcast, and we reflected at some of our current favorite podcasts, and one of mine was the Base CS Podcast, which covers really intense computer science subjects in a very playful and fun style. So you're like learning really rich stuff, and it's somehow still kind of fun and playful, even though it gets serious sometimes. It'll like bounce back. And so we wanted something that was along those same lines, decently short, tangible. You could just pick it up and put it down. Single item focused, very packed, and very sort of like spec focused as well. We wanted to really bring forward the complexities that CSS can offer, and start to teach people those edgy, more intense concepts that it has underneath the covers there. We picked because, the way that we initially picked, we made a big list of features in CSS, and we tried to find the ones that would build upon each other naturally. So that's why we started with the box model, built up borders and other things, is because we needed to be able to reference those initial learnings later in episodes, because so much of this stuff is like, so that's why we did specificity, box model, and some of these like really essential concepts for you in CSS. And we have many more topics. Right now we talk mostly about stable things. We will like allude to things that are experimental, but we as we get closer to like having less like sturdy topics, we'll go into more and more of this like future stuff. So we'll go into more proposal type of spec work. We'll go into Houdini as well. So we plan on like a Houdini little mini series. And there's even like opportunities for a whole episode on just the syntax it's called the mini, what is it? It's like in the mini match syntax. That's when you're doing, do you remember even or odd, or 2n or 1n plus 2, and those sort of like little combos you can do? That's a whole syntax. That's a whole mini language. And we want to do an episode on just that. We'll just be like, hey, let's all learn the little mini language inside of CSS. There's a language inside of CSS. So there's like episodes all over CSS just like that. And
I would love to hear.
I don't know what we'll do when we run out.
Yeah, that sounds like a very interesting episode. I'd like to hear it now. Great. So, Adam, do you have any questions you want to ask us?
Oh, yeah, of course. So let's see. Y'all are doing international layouts. You're all in custom properties. What are typography needs that you feel are lacking? Like when you see a site switch, so Chromium has done a couple things where like rendering performance has increased. There's higher quality in terms of like glyphs and spacings and specialty handlings of Hebrew specifically. Is there more like that? So we have logical property things y'all are running into, but are there typographic issues, or is that all stable and good?
I think it's pretty good, specifically if you work with the right fonts. One thing that is very different and maybe problematic, it's not very problematic, but it's very different because we have, I don't know what the English word for it, dotting. You know what I mean? We have like little dots inside or little lines inside between the letters that says the way that you suppose to pronounce the word. Now, 99% of the sites in Hebrew in Israel don't use them, but some do. And the number of fonts that actually supports it and use it correctly are very small. Like I think I can count maybe 2 or 3 fonts that actually do it nice. Um, and if you have like a multi-language site, so these fonts has no English parallel. Um, this is one thing I can think about, but I can't think of. It's not a real problem because, as I said, 99% of the website don't use it, and
Yeah.
I can't think of a solution.
Does the system UI font have those dots built in it? I really like to use it because I assume it would have these things. It's the operating system font that's supposed to be international ready and vetted for, 5-10 years or whatever.
Yeah, so the fonts that does support it are the fonts like David and Arial and the very common fonts. But if you want to go for a more modern fonts, like the fonts in Google Fonts, for example, they don't support most of them, not all of them. Don't support them. You can buy like those really expensive fonts that have dotting including in them.
Yeah. But when you load those fonts to, go ahead.
I have one thing that doesn't work in Hebrew, and this is one funny thing. In CSS, you can do ellipses with 1 lines, and now you can do with multiple lines. I don't know why they do it, but it's with all display flexbox that is called display WebKit box. You know what I mean?
I can explain it too, but yeah.
It's supporting all the browser, that it's good, but it isn't support for Semitic languages like Hebrew and Arabic. It's only supporting LTR language. And this is kind of a problem. A lot of developers in Israel ask me, how can we solve it for Hebrew and Arabic? And I told them, we can't. Maybe you have some answers for us, maybe.
Wow. That's unfortunately not surprised, but like a lot of features sometimes they think they're done, but these are just humans building them, right? And so they don't understand all of the different areas. What you're bringing up is a pain point I'm certain that our layout engineers are aware of and they want to resolve quickly. And I'll let them know that I've run into somebody who's hitting them right now. I'll give them a little love nudge, be like, hey,
Great.
Let's see what else say. I don't know. I could probably. Here. I don't know. Okay. Wait. I got 2 questions for you. One is going to be about color, and the other one is going to be about the prefers reduced data media query, and if you've heard of it, and if you have any use cases. Because I was just thinking, if you have a font that has special glyphs, and you could load it conditionally in your CSS, if you wanted to, or just somewhere you could like load these extra glyphs. And anyway, it just sounds like fun opportunities to layer in loading. So my question is prefers reduced data something that you have any use cases for? Are folks browsing commonly with a data saver mode on that you would like to tie into your CSS? And then the other question is, how are you guys writing color, and what's the color systems in your international sites? I'm interested. So
HSL is for the colors. I think I'm trying to use everything HSL. HSL is the best now, and not all the time I can use it, but I try most of the time to use HSL. This way you can create one color and from it a lot of different colors, and you can change the base color one time and plop, all the colors are updating.
Yep.
The second,
brilliant.
I'm not sure that I understand it. The second one you asked.
Okay. There's a media query that is just like prefers reduced data and prefers color scheme, dark mode. In your operating system, like on Android and on Windows, you can say data saver mode or browse and save data. Oh, iOS has this too. You can go say, and so now what we have in CSS is an ability to tie into that setting. So you can say, hey, if the user prefers reduced data and it's on, don't go download this huge background image. Give them an SVG or give them just a flat blue color. So you just saved them a whole megabyte of a background image download because your CSS can now be intelligent about the state of someone's data saver preference. Does that sound interesting? Do you have use cases for that?
The dark mode, you mean? Or the dark mode with the
No, the reduced data, the reduced data mode. Of course. I can see myself using it when I do like big websites like for big brands, for example, that they're filled with images and videos and everything else. So I can definitely see myself using it, but I can also see the objection from the client side. Like the client side, the client is going to say, I don't care about the guy using it. I don't care that he wants to save a megabyte. I want him to see the site as I want him to see the site. But so there's a give and take. But I think it's a very good possibility. Yeah, I want to have the option at least.
Yeah, totally. Perfect. Well, y'all sound on top of it. I had a blast talking about logical properties. You all are very educated in this space. I'm extremely impressed and look forward to talking to you more. And I'm going to watch the rest of y'all's videos and kind of sink into all this information you guys are sharing. This is really, really good stuff.
I will send some of my stuff to you. I have an article and a talk in English about logical properties that it will be interest you. And
yeah,
it was my pleasure to talk with you. It was very enjoyable, really. I enjoyed so much. The most enjoyed talk till now for me.
Yeah, so Adam, I want to thank you too for being with us. We learned a lot and we had a great time. Do you have any final words for the viewers?
No, CSS is awesome. Have fun learning and growing with it. I learn something new about CSS every day still, and I think that is exciting. And hopefully that's exciting to your viewers as well. So keep writing CSS. It's growing with us, and just have fun.
Okay, so I'm just gonna say thanks to all of our viewers. We'll be here next time, still talking about CSS, but with a different person. Bye-bye.